join with me in the unison prayer. Loving God, we welcome your living presence in our midst. Share our joy and our thanks for the love you give us. Sing with us, dance among us, pray with us, shower us with your love. Amen. And our scriptures for this day are in two parts. In the epistles, the first epistle of Peter in the first chapter, beginning with the 17th verse. If you invoke as Father the one who judges all people impartially according to their deeds, live in reverent fear during the time of your exile. You know that you were ransomed from the futile ways inherited from your ancestors, not with perishable things like silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ, like that of a lamb without defect or blemish. He was destined before the foundation of the world, but was revealed at the end of the ages for your sake. Through him you have come to trust in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope are set on God. Now that you have purified your souls by your obedience to the truth, so that you have genuine mutual love, love one another deeply from the heart. You have been born anew, not of perishable, but of imperishable seed, through the living and enduring Word of God. And our second lesson is from Luke in the 24th chapter. This is the very familiar Emmaus Road story. Now on that same day, we're again talking about that Easter Sunday. I just turned off my... Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things which had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. So he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other as you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place here in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. When they came near to the village, to which they were going. He walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it's almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and went to Jerusalem. And they found the 11 and their companions together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. May God add a blessing to our hearing and understanding of this, the Holy Word of God. Amen. When we read through the gospel stories and we talk about the disciples and the apostles, and we mention all the followers of Jesus, this is the only time that a gentleman called Cleopas is mentioned. He's only mentioned once here, as the one who was walking down the road to Emmaus from Jerusalem with a companion. And they happen upon a stranger to them, who they're just walking side by side with, and talking about the things that were going on in Jerusalem and vicinity during the days. We don't know why they're going to Emmaus. Maybe it's because that's their hometown and they think it's over, even though they've heard these fantastic things in Jerusalem that morning. Well, you know, these women are telling some kind of a wild story about this Jesus guy having an empty tomb, and they don't know where the body is, and so we're trying to figure all that stuff out, and we're sad about it because we don't know that there's been anything going on. Last week we heard about how the disciples, right afterwards, this same day, were locked in a room for fear of the outsiders. And 8 days later, they were still locked in that room, even though they saw Jesus that day and received the Holy Spirit. Here's another instance of followers of Jesus who really don't know what to do and what to make of this thing. Because this is a movement that we really think is important. It's a time in the life of the church where it could just as easily dwindle and die as move ahead and become the kind of movement that has attracted millions and millions of followers throughout the world by now. So, this is a turning point in the life of the followers of Jesus. It's a turning point in our lives as well. Because I've been thinking about the roads that we travel. Because I've done a lot of driving back and forth from Annville to Columbia. And it's more traveling back and forth from Columbia to Annville than I've ever done. And I drive the same road back and forth. But I keep thinking about, you know, it's probably a little bit further than it was between Jerusalem and Emmaus. I think it was like 6 or 7 miles to Emmaus from Jerusalem. And it gives me time to think and listen to the radio and imagine, you know, what's going on in the world, because I listen to a lot of public radio, and I hear a lot of reports of things that are going on in the world, and I'm also thinking about the people that I cross paths with, especially on Sunday mornings, because on Sunday mornings, I can tell that some people are going to church. And some people that are following me are going to church. Some people that are coming toward me are going to church. But for the most part, I know they're not going to the same church that I'm going to. And I wonder what churches they're going to and what messages they're going to find as they travel the roads. And I think about the people that are going to the church that I'm going to today here at Salem. And I wonder, what roads did you travel to get here today to the church? How far did you have to come? I know Yvette came from Dallas. And Steve and Peggy came from up the hill, and Peggy also from nearby, and Lance is fairly nearby, but Linda and Andre came from some distance to get here, right?
That's from Mount Joy.
Mount Joy, all right. Karen came from Marietta. Julia lives close by. Kelly and I came from Annville. But those roads that you traveled and the people that you passed, even if it was just a short distance, I don't know what I don't know what the research is on this, and I wish I would have looked a little bit more into the research on this. But I'm guessing that people are driving, several miles to get to church, and people pass a number of churches between their home and the place they wind up going to worship. And I know, and there are quite a few churches in Columbia. So think about those roads and the people that you passed to get here and the churches that you passed to get here today. When you got here, what were you hoping to see? I think those disciples, Cleopas and his buddy, were hoping to see something familiar to them. Something that made sense to them. Because they were really puzzled about what all this stuff meant. This death of the Messiah. This brutal violence that was undertaken in the name of religion. In the name of maintaining the status quo. In the name of becoming great again? I don't know. But they had some purpose in going to Emmaus. Maybe it was a high school reunion. Maybe it was just, this is Easter Sunday, so let's just go relax. We were in Jerusalem for the holidays, for the Passover feast. Now it's just time to go back home. But along the way, they opened themselves to something new. They saw this strange guy, and they didn't just walk away and say, well, don't bother us, buddy. We've got our own thing doing. We aren't gonna worry about walking with you on this path. Because you might disagree with us, or you might point something out that we hadn't seen before that we aren't ready to see today, because we're really focused on ourselves. Focused on our pain, our grief, our remorse, our sadness. We are taking this road to get to some place of comfort in our lives. And I think that happens all too often, no matter how long our journey or how short our journey. We find ourselves along the way seeking places of comfort. Maybe it's a favorite restaurant. Maybe it's back to our home. Maybe it's a grocery store where we can get some comfort food. Maybe it's a gas station where we can be relieved that our car is going to make it as far as we want to travel next. But where else can the road take you? Maybe it will take us someplace that we've never been before. The other night after a meeting here, I decided to go home by a different route because they told me about Maytown. I wanted to drive through Maytown on my way back. And boy, once you get to Maytown, on your way back to Anvil, I have no idea how to get back to Anvil. And that's what I think the church has to be all about from here on. This church and every church is we need to find a different route that's going to take us to a different place than we've been going to all the way along the line. Because if we keep going to our places of material comfort, to our places of spiritual comfort, to our places where we can be fed by the same foods that we've been fed by all these years, we're missing a whole lot of reality that is way different than the things that we've experienced so far. I was saying to Kelly earlier this week that the church has been the forefront of progressive change in society forever. Ever since Jesus walked the earth. Jesus talked about taking care of the poor. Jesus talked about the widow. He expressed women's rights for the first time in the history of the world up to that point. And then when the church grew to be the movement that it is, especially even in this country, if it hadn't been the church, we wouldn't have had abolition. If it hadn't been the church, we wouldn't have had education. We wouldn't have had secondary colleges in the United States, because the church established the first colleges in this country. If it wasn't for the church, we wouldn't have had health care, because the church established a lot of the first hospitals that were widely available to the public and reaching out to people who couldn't afford that. And now, instead of continuing to be a progressive movement of change, we see the church is holding us back. And that's the unfortunate thing. Holding us back from a road to progress that too many people have left behind. When we follow the path that we've been following for generations as people of faith, we can expect that we'll find the same results and we'll go to the same places. And unfortunately right now, some of those places are declining. And some of those places are where our younger generation and our youngest generation says, well, we don't need the church, because the church doesn't seem like it needs us. But we must recognize that the risen Christ is in those that we meet along the way, whether it's a young person, an old person, whether it's somebody we agree with or somebody that we disagree with. The risen Christ is in each one of those, and as we recognize that, and as we break bread together, and as we interact, and as we provide each other comfort and care and conversation and love, and all the things that Jesus offered to us that are so important to us in this world. Yet, it's naive to think that it's that simple, that loving our neighbors is something that makes everything start to work a little better or a little differently, because there are some complicated and some complex issues of division in our society today that we just can't solve with simple love. But we can take a few steps along that road in the companionship of Christ that makes our hearts burn within us when we open the scriptures to each other and we say, you know, we are not, as a church, an agency of recalcitrance, but we are an agency of movement and change. A place where new things can happen. Not because we're so desperate that we have to seek some kind of change, but because we know it's the right thing to do and it's the right way to be as a church, to reach out to new communities. So that's the challenge that I'm laying in front of this congregation. Who needs to be along with us as we travel these roads to Emmaus? Who do we need to reach out to fulfill our mission and our purpose as a church? When we say, no matter who you are or where you are in life's journey, what does that mean to us? Should we be more assertive in our outreach to the communities that surround us? Not just feeding the poor, we've done that for 18 years. It's giving breakfast to the people in the community at the end of the month, every month for 18 years. But who else? What other lives can we touch? Who can we say we've opened to Christ's teachings because we've learned from Christ? Those aren't answers that I can give. I can give you a list of people that we might reach out to. But it's up to you to figure out who are the right people to reach out to. We're going to sing this song called Stay With Us, number 93 in the SPP. Because we need to beckon, just like Cleopas and his buddy did, beckon Christ to stay with us a little bit longer so that we may learn just a little bit more. Number 93 in the SPP. If you are able, please stand in body or in spirit.